The floodwaters were rising fast, and Patricia Drouch knew she had to get out. But then she heard a desperate whimper coming from beneath an overturned car. Most people would have kept walking. The water was dangerous. Time was running out. But Patricia couldn't leave that sound behind. She waded into the current and pulled a terrified young dog from certain death. She named her Hope and brought her home. Over the years, Hope became more than a pet, she became family. Patricia's loyal companion. Her son Stanley's devoted guardian. Years later, that kindness came back and saved the life Patricia treasured most. If this story already has you hooked, go ahead and like this video and subscribe for more heartwarming true stories. Stay until the end. You won't believe how one act of compassion created a miracle that saved a child's life. Patricia Drouch had seen a lot in her 32 years, but she'd never seen rain like this. For 3 days straight, the skies had opened up over their little town, dumping more water than anyone could remember. Now, the creek behind their neighborhood had jumped its banks, and the water was coming fast. "We need to go, Patricia, now." Her husband Tom stood in the doorway, car keys in hand, his face tight with worry. She looked around their modest living room one more time. The photos on the mantel, the couch where they watched TV every night. Everything they'd built together. "I know," she said softly, grabbing the small bag she'd packed with their important papers and a few changes of clothes. Outside, the street had become a river. Water swirled around their ankles as they waded toward the car. Neighbors were doing the same, everyone moving in a kind of organized panic toward higher ground. Mrs. Henderson from next door struggled with her walker, and Patricia stopped to help her, one hand under the elderly woman's elbow. "You're a good girl," Mrs. Henderson said, breathing hard. "We look out for each other," Patricia replied. It was just the way she was raised. They were halfway to Tom's truck when Patricia heard it, a sound that made her stop dead in the rushing water, a whimper, desperate and afraid. "Did you hear that?" she asked Tom. "Hear what?" "Patricia, we need to move." There it was again. Coming from underneath Mr. Palmer's overturned sedan, Patricia pulled away from Tom and waded toward the car. "There's something under there." "Patricia, the water's rising. We don't have time." But she was already kneeling in the muddy water, peering under the car. Two brown eyes stared back at her, filled with terror. A young dog, maybe a year old, was trapped in the small air pocket beneath the vehicle. The water was already up to her chin. "Oh, honey," Patricia breathed. "Hold on. Just hold on." The current was strong, pulling at Patricia's legs as she reached under the car. The metal was sharp, scraping her arms. The water was cold. Her fingers found wet fur, and she grabbed hold, but the dog yelped and bit down on her hand in pure panic. Patricia bit her lip against the pain but didn't let go. "I know you're scared, baby. I know. But I've got you." She pulled harder, ignoring the blood mixing with the floodwater, ignoring Tom yelling at her to be careful. With one final tug, the dog came free. The animal was shaking so hard Patricia could feel it in her own chest. She gathered the terrified dog against her, standing up in the waist-deep water. The dog was young, a mixed breed with brown fur plastered to her skinny body. No collar, no tags. Someone had left her behind. "Okay," Tom said, seeing the look on his wife's face, the look that meant there was no argument to be had. "Let's get to the shelter." The high school gym was packed with displaced families when they arrived. Red Cross volunteers handed out blankets and sandwiches. Children cried. Adults spoke in hushed, worried tones about their homes, their possessions, their lives turned upside down in a matter of hours. Patricia found a quiet corner and wrapped the dog in one of the blankets, gently drying her off. The bite on her hand had stopped bleeding, and honestly, she didn't blame the poor thing one bit. "You didn't give up, did you?" she whispered, stroking the dog's head. "You fought to stay alive." The dog looked up at her with those brown eyes, and something passed between them, an understanding. A bond. "I'm going to call you Hope," Patricia said, "because even when everything seemed hopeless, you didn't quit." Hope's tail gave a weak wag, the first sign of trust. She licked Patricia's wounded hand, an apology. Maybe, or a thank you. Patricia felt tears sting her eyes. Everything she owned might be underwater right now, but this little life had been saved. That had to count for something. Tom sat down beside them, watching his wife cradle the dog. "We're keeping her, aren't we?" Patricia looked at him, then back at Hope, who had finally stopped shaking. "How can we not? She needs us." He smiled, That gentle smile she'd fallen in love with 15 years ago. Then I guess we have a dog. That night, as families settled into cots and sleeping bags across the gymnasium floor, Hope curled up right next to Patricia, her head resting on Patricia's arm. Outside, the rain finally began to slow. Inside, in that crowded shelter, something new had begun. Patricia couldn't know it then, but the life she'd saved that day would one day save the life she'd cherish most. But that's the thing about kindness, you never know how far it will reach, or when it will come back to you. The floodwaters receded, as they always do. Life, slowly but surely, went back to something like normal. Patricia and Tom's house had taken on water, but not as bad as some. They spent weeks cleaning, repairing, putting the pieces back together. Through it all, Hope was there. At first, the dog was nervous about everything. Loud noises made her jump. She'd hide under the bed during thunderstorms, shaking like a leaf. But Patricia was patient. She'd sit on the floor beside the bed, talking softly, letting Hope know she was safe now, that nobody was going to leave her behind ever again. Slowly, week by week, Hope began to heal. The scared, skinny dog transformed into something beautiful. Her coat grew shiny, her tail wagged more, and she learned faster than any dog Patricia had ever seen. Sit, stay, come. Hope picked it all up like she was trying to say thank you the only way she knew how. What surprised Patricia most was the bond that formed between them. Hope wasn't just a pet. She became a friend, a companion. Wherever Patricia went, Hope wanted to be. Morning walks turned into their special time together, just the two of them watching the sun come up. When Patricia ran errands, Hope would wait by the door, tail wagging the moment she heard Patricia's car pull back in the driveway. "That dog loves you something fierce," their neighbor commented one day. Patricia smiled, running her hand along Hope's head. The feeling's mutual. 3 years passed. Good years, simple years. Then one evening, Patricia came home from the doctor with news that would change everything. "Tom," she said, her voice shaking with excitement and fear and joy all mixed together, "we're going to have a baby." Tom's face went through about a dozen emotions before landing on pure happiness. They'd been trying for so long, had almost given up hope, and now, here it was, a miracle of their own. Hope seemed to know before they told her. Dogs have a sense about these things. She became even more protective of Patricia, following her from room to room. When Patricia's belly started to grow, Hope would rest her head against it gently, like she was saying hello to the baby inside. Stanley arrived on a cold January morning, screaming his lungs out, perfect in every way. When Patricia brought him home from the hospital, Hope's reaction was something she'd never forget. The dog approached the baby carrier so carefully, tail wagging slow and gentle. She sniffed Stanley's tiny hand, and when the baby grabbed onto her ear, Hope just stood there, patient as could be, letting him hold on. "He's part of our family now," Patricia told Hope, stroking the dog's head. "You're his big sister." And Hope took that job seriously. She'd lie beside Stanley's crib during naps, her ears perked for any sound. During those long, exhausting nights when Patricia walked the floor with a crying baby, Hope was right there too, keeping them company. As Stanley grew from infant to baby to toddler, Hope was his constant shadow, his protector, his friend. When Stanley took his first wobbly steps, Hope walked beside him like a furry guardrail. When he fell, and he fell a lot, Hope would lick his face until he laughed instead of cried. And when 14-month-old Stanley would grab Hope's tail or accidentally step on her paw, Hope never snapped, never growled. She just accepted it all with the patience of a saint. "I don't know what we'd do without her," Patricia said to Tom one evening, watching Hope and Stanley play on the living room floor. "She's family," Tom replied simply. One afternoon, Patricia noticed something that made her heart swell. Stanley had toddled toward the pool area. They'd installed a fence, of course, but toddlers are escape artists. Before Patricia could even move, Hope was there, gently but firmly blocking Stanley's path, herding him back toward the house. "Good girl," Patricia called out. "You keep him safe." Hope's tail wagged, and she looked back at Patricia with those same brown eyes that had stared up from beneath that overturned car years ago. The scared, abandoned dog was gone. In her place was a beloved family member, a guardian, a friend. Patricia thought about how close she'd come to just walking past that day, how easy it would have been to tell herself there wasn't time, that someone else would help, that she needed to save herself first. But she'd stopped. She'd reached out. She'd pulled Hope from those rising waters. And now Hope was here, woven into the fabric of their family, loving Stanley like he was her own pup. Life was good. Life was full. Patricia had her husband, her son, and her faithful dog. She had everything she needed. She didn't know that very soon, Hope would repay that kindness from the flood in a way that would stop her heart and save it all at once. It was one of those perfect spring days that make you grateful to be alive. The sun was warm, the breeze was gentle, and Patricia's garden was finally starting to bloom after the long winter. She'd been out there all morning, pulling weeds and planting new flowers, while Stanley played on his blanket nearby with his favorite toys. Hope dozed in the shade of the oak tree, one eye always cracked open, watching, always watching. Patricia's phone rang. Her mother. "Hi, Mom," she answered, pulling off her gardening gloves. "How are you feeling?" Her mother had been dealing with a bad cold, and they chatted about doctor's visits and medications as Patricia stepped into the kitchen to wash her hands. Through the window, she could still see Stanley on his blanket, stacking his blocks. Everything was fine. She'd just be a minute. That's all it takes. Just a minute. Just one moment where you look away, where you think everything will be okay, where you tell yourself, he's right there. What could happen? Stanley saw a butterfly, beautiful and yellow, dancing through the air. At 14 months old, he didn't think about gates or pools or danger. He just thought, pretty. He wanted to follow it. So he did. The pool gate, Tom had been working on the latch that morning and must have forgotten to close it all the way. It swung open under Stanley's little hand. Hope was up in an instant, following him, her instincts screaming alert. Stanley leaned over the pool's edge, reaching for the butterfly's reflection in the water. And then he was falling, tumbling forward with a small splash that, in any other moment, might have been cute. But not now. Not when he didn't know how to swim, didn't know to hold his breath, didn't know anything except sudden panic and water and fear. Hope didn't hesitate. Not for 1 second. She dove in. The water closed over Stanley's head. He kicked, flailed, tried to breathe and got only water. His eyes rolled back. Everything was wrong. Everything was scary. Everything was... And then something was underneath him. Something solid, pushing him up. Hope positioned herself right beneath Stanley's small body, her legs finding the pool bottom, her back becoming a platform. Stanley's face broke the surface. Air. Blessed air. Hope held perfectly still. Every muscle in her body focused on one thing, keeping this baby's head above water. Don't move. Don't let him sink. Keep him safe. Keep him safe. Keep him safe. In the kitchen, Patricia said. "Mom, let me call you back." Something felt wrong. That mother's instinct. That feeling in your gut that says, check on your baby now. She stepped outside, saw the empty blanket. Stanley? The toys scattered across the grass. Stanley. The open gate. Stanley. Patricia ran. She's never run so fast in her entire life. Her heart was a drum. Her breath was fire. Her mind was screaming, no, 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 please God, no. And then she saw them. Stanley, face up in the pool. His lips were blue. His eyes were rolled back. He wasn't moving. He wasn't. But Hope. Hope was there. Standing in the water, her body beneath Stanley's, keeping his head up, keeping him from sinking all the way under. How long had she been there? A minute? 2? Forever? Patricia dove in, not caring about her phone in her pocket, her shoes, anything. She grabbed Stanley, pulled him from Hope's back, hauled him to the pool deck. His little body was limp. Too light, too still. "Tom," she screamed, "call 911. Her hands were shaking, but she made them steady. CPR. She knew CPR. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. Come on, baby, come on. Breathe for Mama. Please breathe. Tom burst out of the house, phone to his ear, his face white. They're coming, they're coming. Hope climbed out of the pool and sat right beside them, whining, her whole body shaking. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. Come on, Stanley. Come on, son. You're going to be okay. You're going to be... Stanley coughed. Water came out of his mouth. He gasped, choked, and then he cried. The most beautiful sound Patricia had ever heard. He was breathing, crying, alive. She pulled him to her chest, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe herself. Thank you, God. Thank you. Thank you. The ambulance arrived, sirens, paramedics, oxygen masks. gentle hands taking Stanley from her arms to check his vitals. One of the EMTs looked at Hope, still sitting there soaking wet, and then at Patricia. "Your dog?" he asked. Patricia could barely speak. She was holding him up, in the water, keeping his head above. The paramedic's eyes widened. "She saved his life, ma'am. You understand that? Without her, this would be a very different scene right now." Patricia looked at Hope, the dog she'd pulled from the floodwater, the dog who'd been so scared, so broken, so close to death herself. And now Hope had saved her son. "I know," Patricia whispered. "I know." The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of monitors. Stanley slept in the big bed, looking so small under the white sheets, oxygen tube under his little nose. Patricia sat beside him, holding his hand, unable to look away. The doctor had been clear. Near drowning. If he'd been under much longer, if his airway had been blocked, if Hope hadn't. Patricia couldn't finish that thought. She couldn't bear to think about what might have been. "Mrs. Drouch?" The doctor came in, chart in hand, and Patricia's heart clenched. But he was smiling. Stanley's going to be just fine. No water in his lungs, no signs of oxygen deprivation. His vitals are perfect. You can take him home tomorrow. Patricia's hand flew to her mouth. "Are you sure?" He was blue. He wasn't breathing. "Your dog kept his airway clear," the doctor said gently. "However long he was in that water, she kept his head up. That's why he's okay. That's why you still have your son." The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. Relief and gratitude and love all mixed together until Patricia couldn't tell where one emotion ended and another began. When they brought Stanley home the next day, Hope was waiting at the door. The moment she saw the baby, her whole body relaxed. She sniffed him carefully, licked his hand, and then looked up at Patricia as if to say, "He's okay? He's really okay?" Patricia knelt down, wrapping her arms around Hope's neck, burying her face in the dog's fur. "You saved him," she whispered. "You beautiful, wonderful girl, you saved my baby." And suddenly, Patricia was back in the flood. Back in that moment when she could have kept walking, could have saved herself first, could have told herself there wasn't time. But she hadn't. She'd stopped. She'd reached into that dark water. She'd saved Hope. And Hope had saved Stanley. The circle was complete. Word spread through the neighborhood, then through town. The local news picked up the story. Hero dog saves toddler from drowning. Hope's picture was in the paper, and people Patricia had never met stopped her at the grocery store to tell her how wonderful it was, how miraculous, how Hope was an angel. And Patricia would smile and say, "She is, she really is." But late at night, when Tom was asleep and the house was quiet, Patricia would sit with Hope in the living room, just the two of them like in the old days. She'd run her fingers through Hope's fur and think about how everything connects, how one choice leads to another, how the kindness you give comes back to you in ways you could never imagine. "I saved you," she'd whisper to Hope, "and you saved him. But really, you saved all of us, didn't you? You taught us what love looks like." Hope would rest her head on Patricia's lap, those brown eyes looking up with complete trust, complete devotion. A few weeks later, the family gathered in the backyard for a small celebration. Nothing fancy, just close friends and neighbors who wanted to honor Hope. There was a cake, dog-friendly, of course, and a new collar with a medal that said, "Hero." Stanley, fully recovered and back to his energetic toddler self, sat in the grass with Hope, sharing pieces of hot dog and laughing every time she licked his face. He didn't understand what had happened. He wouldn't remember any of it. But Hope would always be there, watching over him, protecting him, loving him. Mrs. Henderson, the neighbor Patricia had helped during the flood, raised her glass of lemonade. "To Hope," she said, "and to Patricia, who taught us all that kindness is never wasted." "To Hope," everyone echoed. Patricia watched her son and her dog, her two greatest loves playing in the sunshine, and felt a peace settle over her that was deeper than words. She'd almost lost everything that mattered. But because she'd stopped to help, because she'd refused to leave Hope behind, because she'd believed that every life was worth saving, her family was whole. That evening, after the guests had gone home and Stanley was tucked into bed, Patricia stood in the backyard watching the sunset. Tom came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You okay?" he asked. She leaned back against him. "Better than okay. I was just thinking about that day. The flood. How I almost didn't stop. How easy it would have been to just keep walking. But you did stop, Tom said softly. Because that's who you are. You see someone in trouble, and you help. You always have. And now she saved our son, Patricia whispered. She gave back what I gave her. But it feels like so much more. Hope trotted over to them, tail wagging, and sat at their feet. Patricia reached down to scratch her ears. Thank you, she told the dog. Not for the first time, and not for the last. Thank you for being our guardian angel. In the house, Stanley called out, not scared, just awake and wanting his parents. Tom went in to check on him, and Patricia heard him say, It's okay, buddy. Mama and Hope are right outside. We're all here. We're all safe. And they were, safe and together, bound by love and luck, and a choice made years ago to stop and help, even when it would have been easier not to. Patricia looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, other people were making choices. Some would stop to help. Some would keep walking. But she knew now, in her bones, what she'd maybe always known in her heart. The love you give away never really leaves you. It circles back, sometimes in ways you never expected, in moments you never saw coming. It saves you just when you need saving most. Hope had been scared and abandoned, drowning in floodwater. Patricia had reached out her hand. And years later, when Stanley was drowning, Hope had become the hand reaching back. That's how love works. That's how it's always worked. Come on, girl, Patricia said to Hope. Let's go inside. Our family's waiting. And together, woman and dog, rescuer and rescued, they walked back into the warm glow of home. Patricia's story reminds us that the love we give never truly leaves us. It comes back when we need it most. If this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, please take a moment to hit that like button. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss these incredible true stories of love, loyalty, and second chances. And if you know someone who needs to hear this today, a friend, a family member, someone who loves animals or believes in the power of kindness, please share this video with them. Stories like Patricia and Hope's deserve to be told, and your share might be exactly what someone needs to see today. Thank you for being here. And until next time, remember, compassion always finds its way back home.